Hello everyone, myself Vinay Kumaram. I am pursuing PhD in physics. So in this particular YouTube channel, I will be teaching physics, chemistry and mathematics starting from 8th standard till 12th standard. So if you want to learn physics, chemistry and mathematics, then please do subscribe to my channel. So in my previous videos, I was actually discussing the 8th chapter of 9th standard science subject, that is on force and laws of motion. So I have already discussed two laws of motion, that is first and second law, and I have also discussed the example questions which are there in this particular chapter. So in this particular video, we'll go through the next concept which is there in this particular chapter, that is third law of motion. So now, to understand third law of motion, we will consider an example. So first, we will see two different examples. So in first example, I have a 3 kg massed object. So first object has mass 3 kg, and let us take second object which has mass 5 kg, which is lying on a road. So now, if this particular ball with 3 kg mass, if it goes and applies the force on this particular object which has mass equal to 5 kg, then let us assume the force applied by this first object is 10 Newton. So now, if force applied by this first object on second object, if it is 10 Newton, then this second object will apply same amount of force in the opposite direction, that is 10 Newton. So now here, this particular first object which is actually applying force on the second object, so this force F1 which is equal to 10 Newton in this particular direction, so this object will apply same amount of force, that is 10 Newton in opposite direction, so that is F2. So here the first force is acting on the second object and the second force is acting on the first object. So here you should remember there are two different forces. So here first force is the force applied by the first object on second object. So here this force is applied on, so this force is applied on second object by first object. So now this F2 is the force applied by second object on the first object. So it is applied on first object by second object. So here forces are opposite in direction and these forces are applied on different bodies. Two forces are acting upon two different bodies simultaneously, oppositely. So that means here force F1 and force F2 are opposite in direction. So here F1 and F2 will be equal and opposite to each other. So F1 is equal to minus F2, where M1 acceleration 1 will be there, which is equal to minus M2 acceleration 2. So this is the equation of third law of motion. So that means here force applied by first object on second object is equal to the force applied by the second object due to the first object's force onto the first object. That means here if you go and hit a particular wall, the wall will also apply same amount of force on you. And let's assume two players are playing football, and these two players while running, if they hit with each other, both of them will get hurt because both of them will apply certain amount of force on each other. So this particular person will apply certain amount of force on this person, and this person will apply certain amount of force on this person. Hence they both hit with each other and both of them get hurt because there is equal and opposite force acting on each other. So always remember here, when one object is applying force on another object and the same amount of force is acted by the other object on the first object, that means here simultaneously both the forces are acting. So that means if first object is hitting the second object with force F1, the other object will also have the same equal force in the opposite direction. That means here both the forces are occurring in pairs, and with the force which with this particular first object is hitting the second object, same amount of equal and opposite force will be applied by the other object. So this particular time simultaneously the force applied by the first object will be creating the second force by the second object on first object in the opposite direction. So that means force applied by the first object will be equal and opposite to the force applied by the second object in opposite direction, where both of the forces are simultaneously occurring and both of those forces are equal and opposite to each other, and both of these forces are acting upon different bodies. That means the force applied by first object is acting upon the second object, and the force applied by second object is acting upon the first object. So that means forces are acting on different objects simultaneously, and they will be equal and opposite to each other. At the same time, the forces will be acting upon the different object. That means first object will apply its force on second object, whereas second object applies same amount of force in opposite direction on the first object. That means forces are acting on different bodies, but they are occurring simultaneously. So that's why forces are coming in pair. Here you can see when this particular first object goes and collides with the second object, here both the forces are coming into picture. So here F1 is in this direction and F2 is in this direction. Here F1 is equal to minus F2. So that means forces are equal and opposite to each other, and at the same time both the forces are occurring. So when this collision is happening between two objects, both the forces are coming into picture. So that means forces are simultaneous. So here both the forces are coming simultaneously together. So both the forces are simultaneous and they are equal and opposite in direction. So here the first force is considered as action force and the second force is considered as the reaction force. And always remember, this action and reaction forces are always simultaneous and occur in pair. So both this action force and reaction force occur in pair, that is they occur simultaneously in opposite direction. So if you want to state Newton's third law of motion, then every action force has equal and opposite reaction force, where action force and reaction force occur in pair simultaneously, where action and reaction force occur simultaneously in pair and act upon different bodies. So instead of writing complete different, I am just writing DIFF. So different bodies. So this is the complete statement of Newton's third law of motion. Every action force has equal and opposite reaction force, where both action and reaction forces occur simultaneously in pair and they act upon different bodies. That is, the first force of first object will act upon the second object, and the second force of second object will be equal and opposite to the first force which will be acting on the first object. That means both the forces are acting on different bodies. The first force is acting on the second body and the second force by second body is acting on the first body. So both the forces are acting on different bodies and they are occurring simultaneously in pairs, and also the magnitude of the force of first object and second object, that is action force and the reaction force, is equal and opposite to each other. So always remember, these forces are action and reaction forces, because only when a particular first object is applying a certain amount of force on second object, then only it is considered as an action, and for that action there will be reaction from that particular second object as well. So that's why force applied by second object is known as reaction force and force applied by the first object is known as action force. So this action and reaction forces will be equal to each other. So that means that both these forces exist at the same time, that is both these forces act upon each other simultaneously, and both these forces are in pair and they are equal and opposite to each other and they act upon different bodies. So this is actually the Newton's third law of motion. So if you understand this particular Newton's third law of motion properly, then you can apply this Newton's third law of motion for various examples which you are actually seeing around you. So for example, if you are walking on the road or if you are running on the road, a person, in order to move forward, he applies force to the earth, and the earth will apply same amount of force oppositely. So that means here, even while walking, even while running, you are actually applying Newton's third law of motion in order to keep that particular motion. So this is all there in this particular chapter. Now you have learnt what do you mean by force, and you have also learnt what are all the laws of motion. So you have learned first law of motion, second law of motion, and third law of motion. And I have also solved certain examples in this particular chapter. So the exercise questions which are there in this particular chapter, I'll be discussing in my subsequent videos. Till then, if you want to learn more physics, chemistry, and mathematics, then you have to subscribe to my channel. Please do subscribe to my channel and stay tuned with my channel. Thank you.